sometimes the best thing we can do is be afraid. To this day, I distinctly remember the first time I got scared in a plane. I quickly realized, due to a sudden bout of turbulence, that I am 9,000 meters high in a metal bird, where if anything were to happen, what would I do? Quick options came to my mind. One is that I would jump out of the airplane. Here I had to rethink and remind myself that not only did I have no idea how to do this, I am also deathly afraid of heights. The other option was to somehow land this aircraft. Now, here I had to kind of reel it in and say, Esti, this is not a video game. There is no restart button. So there is kind of no outcome in which I land an aircraft safely. When we are on a plane as passengers, many sounds can terrify us. Any creak, racket, sudden noises coming from the engines are quite scary. If anyone here has ever been on an Airbus flight, they certainly know what I'm talking about. Because this infamous startup sequence of sounds is so scary, it tends to scare even the most seasoned travelers. And frankly, being scared can ruin the entire experience of flying. We quickly grab the armrest, we start to play with the ends of our sweater, we may even grab our fellow passenger's arm, known or unknown. And because of this, we have no chance of enjoying what's outside. And outside is truly a whole wonder of a world. We can see sunrises, sunsets, the stars, the clouds, and sometimes even the gorgeous aurora. What's more is that if we dare to look not only outside, but maybe down as well, we would see some of the most untouched and glorious places of the world. Places that people may have never even stepped foot on. You could be a true explorer in that moment, yet you're terrified in your arm seat, your fellow passenger's arm is starting to turn purple, and all you can think about is that somehow time has become Einsteinian, every minute feels like 5, and all you want is to feel the security of the ground beneath your feet. When we are scared, we seek security. We seek security for our arts, to calm down and remind that even our smartwatch is screaming at us that not only is the aircraft 9,000 meters high, but also our heart rate. Nowadays, I kind of smile at this. That terrified 9-year-old little girl had no idea that I'd be spending every day of my life as an aerospace system safety engineer. After all she cared about was literature, and I never thought I would turn towards science. Actually, I wanted to be a writer for most of my life. I loved creative imagination and coming up with new ideas. And I was just full of curiosity. Like most young girls, I wasn't ever shown a path or thought of becoming an engineer, let alone a rocket scientist. Although I wasn't bad at math, I despised physics and all the other sciences. And I was just never really set on a path for great success. I wasn't put in the group of good students in my classes. Really, what changed everything is that I tried coding once. Those ones and zeros changed truly the entire way I saw the world. I realized that I could be creating something through a computer screen. And with that, I also didn't need no skill. I may never be able to draw a straight line, but I can show you how to do it on a computer. So maybe it was this fear that led me down this path. Maybe it was that fear that made me change my mind and think, I could do something else with this. And now, not only have I become a seasoned traveler, but someone that found safety and security in those sounds. But what does that world really mean? And what do I do in my everyday job? How does the world of an aerospace safety engineer and a passenger meet? Well, when I hear those sounds as an engineer, I hear something entirely different. Those veering noises are usually the hydraulic system. You hear it most often when the landing gear closes or when they move the flaps on the wings. Those random sounds coming out of the engine before takeoff is actually what we call an engine performance check. And pilots do it before takeoff to make sure that the engine is capable to perform what you need it to get safely to your destination. And the random unknown sounds coming out of the walls is really just because we believe something that we shouldn't. Contrary to popular belief, aircrafts are not rigid structures. They adjust dynamically due to temperature and pressure changes. And really, what all of these sounds do is keep you safe. And of course, there's also PBIT. PBIT is Power Up Built-in Test, or as you would call it, a series of pre-flight checks that happen in order to make sure that all of the hundreds of systems working on an aircraft are ready to go right before you enter your journey. It's almost like when you turn the key in your car and all those little lights either go away or stay there. In modern aviation, when we say that something is safe, we mean that we have accounted for every unlikely scenario. Happenings you've probably never even thought to consider. In fact, we even consider the worst of the worst. We build aircraft with redundancy. Almost every system has an equivalent backup system. Did you know that the chance of an aircraft incident happening is 11 million to 1? That is so small that you are seeing 11 million dots. I promise, I counted. And I have colored one of them red, but I guess good luck finding it. In fact, this is so small that you are more likely to win the lottery. And again, I'm so sorry to disappoint everyone. It is extremely difficult to win the lottery. The connection between anything can happen and that it probably won't is what I do in my everyday job. I work in the wonderful world of mathematics. And that is how I know that two systems are better than one. And that is also how I know that although I accept that anything can happen, I can trip right now, make a mess of myself, break my right arm, a piano can fall on me, and somehow I could even win the lottery without ever purchasing a lottery ticket. But I probably won't. What defines that within mathematics is what we call probability. When passengers we hear that there is a chance of 10 fatal aircraft incidents per year, we're terrified. All we can think about is, what if I was on that aircraft? What's worse is, what if my loved one was on that aircraft? We're scared, and all we can think is, we've been flying for 120 years. How can we not build entirely and perfectly safe aircraft? We don't add that in the same time there are over 180 million road incidents per year worldwide. We also don't add that, according to research, every third person has fallen off a tree while climbing it as a child. Yet here you are, safe and sound. When we hear these statistics, or when we are in an aircraft scared, we choose between two options. One is that we let our fear take the wheel. We get scared and we spiral and we think of the worst of the worst of the worst scenarios. What if the pilot faints? What if both of the pilots faint? What if something entirely improbable and crazy happens? Our minds are very creative, but if we let fear guide it, it will just take us to extremely unlikely places. The other is what we love to do in our everyday life. We're aware, but we shrug our shoulders. We reassure each other. Don't worry, that doesn't happen. Oh, you don't have to worry about that. You only ever see that on TV. Oh, come on, that's just one of those things of the internet. It's impossible. We are aware that almost anything can happen to us, but we can attach a probability to it. After all, when we say that over 10 fatal aircraft incidents may happen per year, we don't add that there are over 100,000 aircraft out there flying safe and sound without any minor incidents every day. However, if I were to take this approach in my work, I don't think any of you or the certification authority would be quite satisfied. If I were to choose between writing documents about my worst improbable crazy fears and just piling in paper, or to write, that doesn't happen, don't worry about it, I don't think any aircraft would be out there flying because of my work. When I say as an engineer that something is impossible, I attach a probability to it. I get it solved by mathematics. When an aircraft is 2 Celsius degrees colder than what it should be, that's a minor issue. Translated, it can happen once in every 1,000 flights. But if there is a fatal incident and lives are lost, that is a catastrophic event. That should be impossible. Translated, it can only happen once every billion flights. In my everyday job, I actually model fears. I let my fear take the wheel first. I think about what's the worst that could happen. What are all these improbable scenarios that I can think of that may lead to bad happenings? And what I do with them is I model them in something called an FTA. And an FTA is a fault tree analysis. Or, to sound less complicated, it's what we call in engineering as a cause and effect diagram. What I do is think up all these worst scenarios, or the leaves in my tree. I call these my hazards. And then what I do is think about, how could these happen? What software or hardware components can fail in order to lead to this one hazard? So what I do is I build them into my roots. I call these my base events, the most basic component failures of the tiniest components. And I look at how each of those can, either one by one or together, lead to just one leaf on this tree. And when I'm done, I have a complete picture of how all of my systems work together and how these events can occur, events that we don't want to occur. And what I do is I apply the mathematical probability of these base events, so my smallest components failing at my roots, to see how likely the hazard is to occur. So what if we were to let go of the armrest and think about, what if I am on an aircraft? How would I model this? How would I, as an everyday passenger, try to apply this idea? Our most likely field is engine failure. Let's think about it. My biggest fear is an engine failing and something going wrong because of that. I have to consider that a modern aircraft, there isn't just one, but 2, 4, or sometimes even more engines. And for anything serious to happen, not one, but all of them would have to fail at the exact same moment in time. We can already see that this is quite improbable and probably not something we should be worrying about. But let's go deeper. Each and every engine is built up of hundreds of thousands of hardware components. They work together in this miraculous way to create something that we call the modern aircraft engine and bring you the wonderful experience of flight. These components, although they can fail, they are more likely to be replaced by other components. In fact, for something serious to happen and for an entire engine loss to occur, not one, but several of these would have to fail. In fact, just as I said, almost all of them would be more likely to have a redundant system that can take over its job. After all, aircraft are full of redundant systems. So as we model this out, we quickly begin to realize that maybe what we fear is just statistical nonsense and almost impossible. And as we start to wonder about this, and our fellow passenger's arm is hopefully starting to regain color, we begin to think, what if I look outside the window? What's more, what if I were to smile at the beautiful views outside that window? And then, as we prepare for the landing, we may begin to wonder, what if I were to do this in my everyday life? What if I let my fear take the wheel? I think of, what's the worst that could happen? What do I truly fear the most in my life? And then, when I say I wish these were impossible, I can take that step forward. I can begin modeling it. If I'm scared of losing my job, I can ask, what is that connected to? I have to perform badly in my 3 projects. What is that connected to? I have to do badly on my first. What can happen there? What can go wrong in the second one? And finally, what can go wrong in the third one? And as I begin to ask these questions and further build out my model, I can find the base events or base occurrences in my everyday life. These I have oversight over. These I can control. And sometimes I can even improve them. And suddenly we begin to realize that our fear is really no more our fear. It has become the building blocks of our everyday life that allow us to improve in every aspect of it. Improve because we finally understand what safe means. It means that we have let our fear guide us, but we can now model it. We can take that step forward. And then it dawns on us. Sometimes the best thing we can do is be afraid.